from Down Under.
Do or do not. There is no try.
G'day, mate. How you going?
G'day, mate. How you going? This is Adam O'Brien, the Fantha from Down Under, coming to you live from Quinlan's Cantina in the Gold Coast of Australia. And on tonight's episode, we're going to be talking to Rob Wainfur, the owner and operator of both Geek Universal and, of course, the amazing Spielberg, John Williams and George Lucas Page, the Bearded Trio. And here on the Fantha from Down Under, I've got my mate who's a friend of the Fantha from Down Under, all the way over in Wales. So he's the Fantha from up above. That's what, the one, the man, the only, Rob Wainfur, the host and owner and coordinator of the Bearded Trio and Geek Universal. Pal, how you going?
What kind of intro is that? How are you doing? Yeah, thanks for the intro. That was very good. Very dramatic.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you should just try and get a job with Lucasfilm, and you could do the intro to Clone Wars, couldn't you? In like,
I could do. We could go. The Clone Wars, the Lost Missions. Yoda's back, and this time he's packing heat. Now, of course,
it's a time of unrest.
It's a time of unrest. And now, Brian Blessed and John Rhys Davies are joining forces. They're going all the way down to Dagobah to kick some green ass. And I think one of the great things about the 90 days, which we're about to talk about now, is we not only got overwhelmed with how Star Wars took us over, not only just the cinema experience, the oral experience of John Williams as well in there. This was a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I was blown away in '77 when I watched Star Wars, and I couldn't get enough of it, especially in the beginning. You know, in the early '80s, I just couldn't get enough of Star Wars, and of course, you didn't have it on demand, so. He's waving a Planet of the Apes figurine at the screen, trying to put me off. So that you just wait. So where was I?
So talking about obviously the overwhelming experience of just your first viewing of this film. I mean, what was your first reaction to that Star Destroyer coming straight over and it seemed like it never stopped?
Do you know what the weird thing is about seeing Star Wars for the first time back in '77 is I can remember queuing up for the cinema, and it was only a 2-cinema screen back then, and there was no multiplex cinema screen, so you had 2 cinemas, and one of them wasn't showing Star Wars, so there was no queue for that, and the queue was right around the building, and we queued up for 2 hours to watch Star Wars. You know, I can remember queuing up. I can remember coming out of the cinema with my brother, getting on a double-decker bus and asking him to hum the theme tune to Star Wars because I was hooked. I can't remember anything about watching the film because, and I think the reason for that is because I've seen Star Wars so many times. It's overwritten that 2-hour segment of watching Star Wars in the cinema because I can't remember it. So I remember before, remember after, can't remember anything about watching Star Wars in the cinema.
Oh, wow.
Kind of weird.
Isn't it? I think because the thing is, you know, we remember it more, I think, from the television experiences we've had or, you know, the burnt out versions of the VHSs where we've played it so many times that the frames are starting to go, you don't like that, you know?
Yeah, for me, one of my memories of watching Star Wars, technically not watching, is listening to Star Wars. Because when it came on TV, I recorded it on my tape recorder that I used for playing my Spectrum games. I used to have a little tape recorder, you know, and you could, little portable one. And I just put it next to the TV, and I remember recording Star Wars and running over and pressing pause when the adverts came on, so I didn't record the adverts. And that was my Star Wars intake for quite some time because I didn't have a video player or video recorder in my room. So to get my Star Wars fix, it was listening to either John Williams, the soundtrack to Star Wars on my record player with a built-in speaker, or it was listening to the Star Wars film that I recorded and playing on my audio tape, on my C90 audio tape. That was my Star Wars fix in the early 80s.
It really is. I think the thing is, the merchandise around Star Wars, whether it's the storybooks. For me, I think there was the colouring in books as a kid and stuff like that. As you get to know the characters, and I suppose even the can of toys there is another example, or even the lunch boxes.
The lunch boxes with the flask, they were amazing. But I remember I would really get excited when there would be a cereal packet with the free transfers in the box. Do you remember? Did you get those in Australia?
Those. Yeah, we did. Yeah.
And you'd rub them on with a pencil, so you'd have like some action scene on the back of the box of the cereal, and then you just rub on the transfers. And I thought that was amazing. I was so delicate rubbing on the transfers. I thought it was amazing. That was amazing for me. And of course, I had my Star Wars figures back then as well, so I used to make up some rather elaborate stories using Star Wars figures. And if I didn't have, my parents weren't particularly well off, so we couldn't really. I didn't have all the figures and all the ships at the time. I think I had a handful of Star Wars figures in the early 80s. And what did I have? I think I didn't have Darth Vader, so I used. Is it Maximilian from the Black Hole? I had that.
Oh, right, yeah.
So he was my bad guy whenever I used to play all my Star Wars figures.
That's right. I had one. G'day, mate. My name's Gary Vader. I'm going down the pub for a coldie. And when I get back, Luke, you better look out. I'm going to tell you about your fatherhood.
Yes, indeed. Anyway. And of course, the other thing, we used to go on holiday to a holiday camp, and I'd run to the arcade, because that, for me, the arcade games at the time, I'd spend all my 10 pence pieces on playing video games. And of course, I remember going to one of the holiday campsites, and they had the sit-down Star Wars arcade.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's something you don't see.
Yeah, I mean, that was the other thing, the other way of getting my Star Wars fix. And I genuinely thought I had the Force. I remember playing that Star Wars game, and Ben Kenobi would say, "Use the Force, Luke." And I genuinely thought I had the Force, because I was shooting, all those, whatever looked like flower plasma things coming out of the TIE fighters at the time, and going through the trench, and I genuinely thought I had the Force.
Hey man, it's me, Kevin Smith, a Star Wars fan, Fantha Tracks fan.
I remember playing the Empire Strikes Back Atari game and some of the other games, growing up, and you'd have that feeling, that you were a Jedi, that you had the Force, And I remember I had this one mate of mine, Brett, who was always like, "The Force is an inanimate object. It doesn't exist." I'm going, righto, mate.
Yeah, well, because I remember my brother would. I remember that this one memory. He was standing at the top of the stairs, and he would throw tennis balls at me at the bottom of the stairs, and I had plastic lightsaber, and I was actually saying to my elder brother, "Bring it on, throw them at me," because I got the Force, and I was trying to whack these tennis balls out of the way with the lightsaber. But, I mean, it's all good fun. I remember there was a video game on the Spectrum called Star Strike, which was basically a blatant rip-off of Star Wars arcade game, and I used to play that to death. I mean, it's amazing when you look back at these things now. So you would not play that game for more than 5 minutes.
No way.
I'd be playing it for hours. I'd love it.
But you got, those games, and I think it wasn't until the 90s that we had things like, I suppose, Super Star Wars on the Super Nintendo, which was so bloody addictive. But typical LucasArts, the bosses were ridiculously hard to kill, and you had to do problem-solving skills, because it was all about teaching the young generation how to problem-solve, because they're not learning in class with maths.
Yeah. See, now where I never had a Nintendo or a Sega, because I was always a home computer guy. I went from Spectrum to Amiga and to PC. So
what? No, Commodore 64.
I did have a Commodore 64, but I seem to love my Spectrum more. It was, I don't know, I just seem to like the games more on the Spectrum. They seem to be there was more choice, especially in the UK. Obviously, our American listeners, it was all Commodore 64 for them.
Yeah.
But in the UK, it was very much Spectrum. But I remember getting blown away by Dark Forces when that came out on the PC, and playing. You played this first-person game, and you were playing Dark Forces. And was it Carl Catan? I think in the Dark Forces, and I was just blown away. And then that evolved into Jedi Knight, and then you had the proper music being played, John Williams music being played, and you were just hearing the actual sound effects of your blaster and your lightsaber. I thought that was just incredible. I loved those games.
It was just fantastic. This sort of generic bad guy who was basically Picard with a line around his face, a little bit like Lieutenant Forge, he just had some really choicely bad lines in that game, but the game was good for what it was at the time.
It was good.
It was like Rebel Assault 2. You knew you weren't really playing anything. I can move my character from here to there to here to there. They could shoot.
I remember playing Rebel Assault and thinking even back then, we're not doing much, are you? But the graphics were great.
And we get a B fighter, or the actual fighter from Return of the Jedi. You actually get to see that in action a little bit more. The B one.
I wasn't Rebel Assault the first live action film bit of Star Wars film since Jedi or something
like
that?
It was, since Battle for Endor.
It was quite a special moment to see some more Star Wars live action.
Fantha tracks.
The other thing that just reminded me of was when Behind the Magic. Did you ever get that?
I did have it, and a friend stole it from me.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
I fired that up quite recently. It doesn't work on Windows 10, by the way. You have to run it on XP. But I fired that up quite recently, and I'm amazed. It was come on 2 discs. How much information was on there? Of course, this was at the time when the internet wasn't really at your fingertips. So to get all, I think they had an encyclopedia of all the Star Wars figures on there.
They
had the scenes, shots, and of course you had the. I'm laughing now. Do you remember the Princess Leia fashion show?
I do.
If you're a Star Wars fan, you don't know about Behind the Magic, Star Wars Behind the Magic. Look it up on YouTube, because there's some amazing video clips on those 2 discs.
It's brilliant. Of course, they had the original deleted scenes from Star Wars and New Hope in there too. And if I remember right, there was a very, very light Episode 1 preview there too.
There was, that's right. And I was working in a shop at the time, electrical store, and I had that just playing constantly, that one bit. And the amount of people that came back were, what? Is that the new Star Wars? Got so many people coming in. But I remember at the time they had the raw footage of the cantina scene with the my friend and myself. We always laugh at this because we enact it, and it's the bartender who's got the Cockney accent. Oh,
that's right.
Your droids have to wait outside. Not allowed in here. It's great. He had the raw audio and the raw footage of the canteen. It was fantastic. Great stuff.
It's amazing. You just see how much work that GL did to make that look bigger too, because the scene was literally just one wall of people, pretty much, and Aliens, wasn't it?
Yeah, because wouldn't the video a side-by-side comparison of what it was on the cinema and the raw footage, and it was amazing at the difference, and that cinema magic brings it all to life.
Yeah, it really is. It really is editing. I mean, at its finest in those scenes. It's just amazing how tightly woven it is too. But I think that's just huge that we can ground that together, and that essential part of Star Wars is there for us today. It just really is. But before we round up today, I want to get your thoughts on one thing. What was the spark for you that John Williams hooked you on with Star Wars? What piece of music, and what is so special to you about that music?
I know you're probably looking for a clever answer, where it probably was Star Wars. Because as I said, when I came out of the cinema for the first time in '77, how old was I? I'm showing off my age now. 5, 6. It might not have been 77. It might have been 78, because we used to get the film a few months later in America. But I remember all the way home on the top level of a double-decker bus with my brother asking him to hum John Williams. Hum the Star Wars theme. Hum the Star Wars theme. And I remember getting home and I just had to get the music. So it was at that point, literally. Some people say, "Oh, that film changed my life." Star Wars changed my life. It turned me into a geek from that point. And I can still remember seeing it, and the music. I remember the music actually being with me more than the film. I loved the film, but the music was incredible. And then Raiders of the Lost Ark came along, and I thought, hang on a minute, this is the guy that does Star Wars, and being hooked on that.
Yeah.
And then I had an album, a Jeff Love album that had Jeff Love does action movies, and it was Jaws. They had Jaws on there. I thought, well, this is great. And I always thought Jeff Love, for many years, I thought Jeff Love did the theme tune to Jaws. But I used to say I used to have that record player, and I would have the Star Wars soundtrack and the Empire soundtrack as well. And that's pretty cool. He's showing me John Williams. What was it? The Boston Pops.
Yeah, so that's his Boston Pops one, which is just fantastic. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So playing his music on the record player while I'm playing over my Star Wars figures, or diving down the trench running one of my dodgy Star Wars games. Yeah, John Williams.
Just amazing, isn't it? It really is. So I want to thank Rob for being on tonight and spreading a bit of his love of the original grabbing of the Star Wars fandom to us, and what really makes it so special is the Force.
The Force of Star Wars.
The Force of Star Wars. Where can the folks find you online, my friend?
Well, you can contact me. I'm on Twitter at Welsh Slider. I have the Bearded Trio website, and we're on Facebook and Twitter as well. And we have a sister site called Geek Universal, and you can find us on Facebook and Twitter as well. I've also got the Bearded Instagram. I never mention Instagram, but we're on there as well.
Awesome. Go and check it out, folks. And thanks to Rob for being on the show tonight.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed that little journey down memory lane. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on.
G'day, how you going? This is how you can catch me on the web. That's right, your host, Adam O'Brien, the Fantha from Down Under. You can catch it Obi Pop Culture on both Twitter and Instagram. You can also catch me on the one, the only Fandom Podcast Network's Lethal Mullet Podcast. But check out Fantha Tracks itself. Check it out at fanthatracks.com. All your Star Wars news in one single file.
The Fantha.
Let it up, Fuzzball.
From Down Under.
Do or do not. There is no try.
G'day, mate.